30th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Da-mi. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with the first official meeting between President Yoon and main opposition leader Lee Jae-myung. President Yoon and Lee expressed their differences over policy and state affairs, but also agreed to continue their talks. The two sides also agreed on the need for a medical and pension reform. Starting today, medical professors at Severance Hospital and Seoul National University Hospital are taking a day off on Tuesdays. And medical school quota increases for the 2025 academic year are set to be determined today. Pro-Palestinian protesters at Columbia University are staying defiant even after the deadline to leave their encampments passed. Protests are also taking place at universities in France, pushing local police to break up the demonstrations. The first official meeting between President Yoon and main opposition leader Lee Jae-myung on Monday ended with no major settlement. But the two were on the same page when it came to the need for continuing their talks, as well as a medical reform for the country. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
President Yoon and main opposition leader Lee Jae-myung reconfirmed their differences over policy and state affairs, while also agreeing to continue their discussions. Yoon and Lee on Monday held their first official meeting since the president took office, following the ruling party's defeat in the April 10th general election, where Lee's opposition Democratic Party of Korea won a sweeping majority. With Yoon having offered to listen to all the opposition leader had to say, their tea time lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes, beginning with Lee's list of demands for political concessions. First, stressing the need to improve people's livelihoods, Lee asked Yoon to accept the DP's proposal of a 250,000 won handout, or roughly $182 to all Korean citizens, as well as the passing of a special bill to compensate victims of rental fraud. Yoon said livelihood support should be more focused on helping those in most immediate need, but the government will consult the opposition on additional measures. Another key issue or demand raised by Lee was to accept a special council probe into the death of a Marine last year and a special act to look into the Itaewon disaster, where 159 people lost their lives as a result of a crowd crush. The DP attempted to put these bills through the National Assembly only to have Yoon veto them, along with a special council probe into allegations of stock manipulation involving First Lady Kim Gon-hee. Lee appeared to allude to the bill, saying concerns surrounding family members should be cleared up, before asking the president to express his regret for exercising his veto on such bills. According to the top office, other than the Itaewon Act, the special bills were not discussed further. Yoon's senior press secretary Lee Do-won told reporters that to narrow their differences in approach to policy, the president suggested a bipartisan consultation body, while Lee indicated he prefers to keep negotiations within the existing framework of the National Assembly. The DP later announced it was disappointed by the meeting, as it sensed no pivot towards its demands for change. Still, the two managed to agree on the need to reform the medical system, with the opposition leader saying it is necessary to expand medical school admissions. He also said the DP will cooperate on the government's pension reform. While there was no joint statement between the two sides, Yoon and Lee agreed to continue meeting in the future in various formats as needed. Yoon has become the first president in South Korea's modern political history to serve his entire term with an opposition-led parliament.
More than anything, it is significant that the president and the opposition leader held talks for 2 hours and 15 minutes on people's livelihoods and state affairs. The meeting is seen by the top office as the first step in reaching out to the opposition.
It is too early to read the tea leaves, but the presidential office says it hopes the first tea meeting will lead to continued communication and cooperation. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And starting today, medical professors at two of Seoul's Big Five hospitals will be taking a day off on Tuesdays. And to fill in their absences, additional public and military doctors will be dispatched. An Sung-jin has the details.
The government has decided to dispatch public health doctors and military medical doctors to help fill the void left by medical professors and junior doctors. The health authorities are reportedly going to look into the demand by Tuesday and deploy additional medical personnel if need be. While assuring there would be no major gap in medical services, the Vice Health Minister again urged trainee doctors to return to work and professors to remain with their patients, adding that the government has a strong will to talk.
We urge doctors to actively participate in discussions to devise improvement measures. A special presidential committee on medical reform has been officially launched, and the government reaffirms its willingness to engage in one-on-one conversations with doctors.
This comes amid much concern from patients in general hospitals, as medical professors made the decision to take one day off from their duties per week. That was decided on Friday at an emergency committee meeting of professors from around 20 major medical schools nationwide. They cited prolonged fatigue after thousands of trainee doctors have been absent from their posts since late February. Professors hinted at the possibility of more than just a day off if the government confirms that there will be an increase in the medical school enrollment quota. Starting this week, the so-called Big Five hospitals will begin to halt medical services one day a week, with professors at Severance Hospital and Seoul National University Hospital taking a day off on Tuesdays, while those at Asan Medical Center and the Catholic University of Korea Seoul St. Mary's Hospital will take Fridays off. Professors at Samsung Medical Center will take voluntary days off based on their working schedule. Adding on to its plan to deploy additional medical personnel, the ministry reiterated its plan to inject a total of around $7.5 billion into surgical and internal departments by 2028. As part of such efforts, it unveiled specific plans to improve the working conditions of essential healthcare workers by increasing medical fees for interventional heart disease treatments, which will change starting the first day of June. Meanwhile, some medical schools have made their final decision on their quota increases for the 2025 academic year. Gangwon University and Chungbuk National University will increase theirs by 50%, while the University of Ulsan has chosen to raise theirs by 75%. Though these schools face protests from medical professors and students after announcing their decision, the final number will be delivered to the Korean Council for University Education on Tuesday. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Hopes for a ceasefire in Gaza are high, with Egypt offering a new proposal for a truce between Israel and Hamas. We're joined by Professor Austin Nupe for more. Good to have you back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. A Hamas delegation visited Cairo Monday for talks aimed at securing a ceasefire. Professor Nupe, can we raise our hopes that a ceasefire deal can be agreed?
One can certainly hope so. It seems the current deal will be the release of something like 35 to 40 hostages in exchange for anywhere from a 3-week to a 10-week truce, though the details are still unknown.
Well, if the deal is reached, does that mean Israeli military operations in Rafah will not take place eventually?
That's a great question, and that's the big unknown. From the Hamas's point of view, even if they agree to the terms of the ceasefire, there's no credible commitment on behalf of the Israeli Defense Force to halt or cancel the siege on Rafah. And so one of the main impediments to a hostage release deal and then a subsequent ceasefire is uncertainty around Israel's plans on the Rafah offensive in the south.
Well, the thing is, Hamas delegation visited Cairo Monday, but they said they will return with a response to the ceasefire offer. Does that mean the ceasefire will actually happen? What do you think?
So a lot depends on Hamas's central political decision-making. Ismail Haniyeh and others that have the final say on the deal. We also know that Hamas and Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, have met in Beijing, discussions over political unity among the Palestinians. And so there's several different negotiations happening all at once, which I think is a good sign. Time will tell whether or not they can agree, both parties can agree to a temporary ceasefire to increase the humanitarian aid that's much needed to the some million plus Palestinians in Rafah right now.
Right. Well, let's say a potential 10-week ceasefire is also secured. What will happen during that time? I mean, hostage exchange, prisoner swap, what's going to happen during that time?
So on the one hand, there'll be an exchange, most likely an exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners held by the Israelis. At the same time, there'll be an increase in humanitarian aid for basic needs, food, water, medicine, fuel for cooking, etc. And there will, at the same time, be international political negotiations around the Israeli Defense Forces actions in the Gaza Strip. As we know, there's an ongoing case brought by South Africa to the International Court of Justice, and there's also rumors that the International Criminal Court is going to be issuing arrest warrants for senior Israeli leaders, though the current status of that is more uncertain than the ICJ case. And so we'll see humanitarian relief, we'll see the negotiations of prisoners for hostages, and then we'll see an uptick in the delivery of basic needs and humanitarian assistance to those Palestinian civilians most in need.
Right, that leads to my next question. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is among the people, figures who might be named in the ICC arrest warrant. Now, how is Netanyahu reacting to this?
Well, reports indicate that he's quite stressed out or quite nervous about the prospect of being indicted.
Yeah.
Obviously, neither Israel nor the United States are signatories to the International Criminal Court, but Israel and America's European partners are. And so in the event that Netanyahu, there's an arrest warrant that's issued, if these Israelis diplomats travel to a country that is signatory to the ICC, they risk arrest and extradition to The Hague. And so that's the major concern, not that Israel nor the United States would extradite these leaders, but they would really restrict their ability to travel internationally and engage in diplomacy.
Definitely. Then let's say Netanyahu is included in that list. What legal procedures or steps lie ahead for Netanyahu?
Well, my guess is that he would negotiate with the Americans some deal to end the war and also shield him from further legal ramifications for the war. Of course, a lot of that depends on third parties, other countries that the Israelis are negotiating with, and the risk that the Israeli delegation would travel to a European Union country, for instance, and risk being arrested and extradited. I think that that possibility is low, though it certainly is a risk that the Israeli government has to account for in the event that the ICC continues by issuing warrants.
Right, but it's not just Israeli officials. Hamas officials are highly likely to be included in the ICC arrest warrant list. Now, what would happen to Hamas officials? Just same thing?
Same thing. That would be harder to extradite Hamas militants given where they're the fact that they're in Gaza, in Qatar, in Egypt, Turkey, and elsewhere. Obviously, the ICC does not have an independent law enforcement arm. It only operates with the consent of signatory states complying with the demand to extradite those accused to stand trial. And so it's of limited effectiveness when it comes to great power conflicts, of which the Israel-Hamas war is a proxy conflict involving the great powers.
All right, Professor Nube, thank you so much, as always, for your time and your insight. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
The deadline has passed for pro-Palestinian protesters at Columbia University to leave their encampments. But despite threats of arrest and suspension, many remain in place. Protests were also seen at French universities. Humza has more.
2 p.m. Monday. That was the deadline given to the pro-Palestinian protesters who had set up an encampment at Columbia University in New York to protest against the dire humanitarian crisis in the Middle East and call for the university's divestment from companies with links to the Israeli occupation of Gaza. Despite threats of suspension, 80 tents and dozens of protesters remained in the encampment just after the 2 p.m. deadline. The school says only the students who remain in the encampment after the deadline would face immediate suspension, and not the hundreds of other students who have encircled the camp to protect the protesters while showing their support. The Columbia protests have inspired similar pro-Palestinian demonstrations on campuses across the country, which have led to hundreds of arrests. 6 protesters were arrested at the University of Texas at Austin on Monday, with dozens of police officers and state troopers at the scene. Around 100 protesters were arrested at Boston's Northeastern University over the weekend after police in riot gear cleared an encampment at the school. Protesters at Yale University were seen setting up a new encampment Sunday afternoon after police arrested nearly 50 protesters and cleared a camp. While protesters were warned of suspension and possible arrest, no deadline to leave the encampment was set. Similar protests were also seen at universities in France, including at Sorbonne University in Paris on Monday, where police moved in on dozens of protesters who had camped out in a courtyard in the university to demand an end to Israel's bombardment of Gaza. It follows another massive protest that broke out at the Sciences Po University in Paris last week. According to an official on Monday, funding for Sciences Po would be suspended until calm and security have been restored. 이승재, Arirang News.
A UN sanctions investigation team has confirmed that the remains of a missile that fell on the northeastern Ukrainian city Kharkiv in January was a North Korean ballistic missile. The 32-page report released by the UN sanctions monitors concluded the debris recovered from a missile that landed in Kharkiv on January 2nd was from a North Korean Hwasong-11 ballistic missile. The report added that while it was unable to independently confirm the missile who launched the missile and from where, trajectory information provided by Ukrainian authorities suggests the missile was far from Russian territory. The report comes after 3 sanctions monitors traveled to Ukraine early this month to inspect the debris. South Korea's major defense companies saw a surge in revenue in the first quarter this year, driven by government efforts to position the nation among the global defense elite. 신세벽 has more.
Major domestic defense companies in South Korea have continued to grow in the first quarter of this year. The government has ramped up its initiative to boost the defense industry's competitiveness, with an aim to rank among the top 4 global defense powerhouses. According to a synthesis of recent market expectations by securities firms and Yousaf Infomax data, the combined first quarter revenue of the 4 leading companies was estimated at 4.4 trillion won, or $3.2 billion, marking an 18% on-year increase. These companies include Hanwha Aerospace, Korea Aerospace Industries, Hyundai Rotem, and LIG Next One. Despite the revenue growth, the overall first quarter operating profit for these companies fell nearly 19% on year to around $251 million. This decline was primarily due to a decrease in high-margin sales in Poland, where recent political shifts have led to a less favorable view of imported weapon systems. Among these, Hanwha Aerospace, South Korea's largest defense company, reported a significant revenue jump of over 9% year-on-year to around $1.5 billion, but saw a sharp decline of 42.5% in operating profit. This was due in part to the absence of new shipments of K9s and Cheonggung missile systems to Poland during the first 3 months of 2024. Kai, known for producing the KF-21 supersonic fighter and F-15 light attack aircraft, posted just over $570 million in revenue and around $29 million in operating profit for the January to March period, up 38% and 102.6% respectively from the previous year. This strong performance was driven by robust exports and steady domestic demand in the aviation and aerospace sectors. Similarly, Hyundai Rotem reported a 9.3% on-year growth in revenue and 40% in operating profits, led by its K2 tank. LIG Next One saw revenue gains from its exports to Indonesia, totaling around $200 million for the quarter. However, the project's low operating profit margin of 2 to 3% had minimal impact on profit improvement, resulting in a contraction of 1.8% in Q1 operating profit. 신세벽, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Kenya, where flash floods and a landslide on Monday killed at least 45 and injured over 110 others in and around the villages near the town of Mai Mahiu, not far from the country's capital, Nairobi. According to the Kenya Red Cross, 109 have been hospitalized, while 49 others were reported missing. Among the deaths, the Kenyan police commander said 17 of the recovered bodies were of children. The Kenyan police initially announced that the landslide and flash floods were caused by the collapse of the old Kijabe Dam. However, the Nakuru County said in a statement late Monday that the burst of water mass in a clogged river tunnel under the railway caused the floods. Heavy rains and flooding in Kenya since last month have killed over 140 people so far, with more than 185,000 residents displaced. Moving over to the United Kingdom, where Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, announced his resignation on Monday after his decision to abruptly end a power-sharing agreement between his Scottish National Party and the Green Party. The decision, coming just days after saying he had no plans to do so, angered the Green Party, and with calls for a no-confidence vote and no alternative for forming a coalition, Yousaf was under pressure to quit before being forced out. The SNP and the Greens have disagreed over climate change and gender identity issues, including Yousaf's plan to scrap Scotland's carbon emissions reduction goal. The search for a new First Minister has begun, with the SNP's John Swinney and Kate Forbes likely contenders. Yousaf became the first Muslim leader of a major UK political party after he succeeded Nicola Sturgeon 13 months ago. Iraq passed a law on Saturday that would impose heavy prison sentences and fines on gay and transgender people. The law, which was passed quietly as an amendment to an anti-prostitution law, imposes a jail sentence of 10 to 15 years for homosexual relations and 1 to 3 years for people who perform or undergo gender transition surgeries. The new law also bans any organization that promotes sexual deviancy, with a prison sentence of at least 7 years and a minimum fine of around $7,600 US. A previous draft version of the law that wasn't passed included allowing the death sentence for same-sex relations. The Iraqi parliament's acting speaker, Mohsen al-Mandalawi, said that the vote was a necessary step to protect the value structure of society and that the legislation can protect children from calls for moral depravity and homosexuality. The Rolling Stones, an iconic English rock band that's been active for almost 70 years, kicked off their North America tour in Houston on Sunday. The band, which formed in 1962, stars some of the eldest surviving rock stars, including 80-year-olds Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, and 76-year-old Ronnie Wood. The tour began with a performance of the 1981 classic Start Me Up, with frontman Mick Jagger dancing and skipping across the stage and showcasing his vocal range. The Houston performance was first of 16 shows confirmed across the US and Canada through July.
Good morning. The last day of April will wrap up on a pleasant spring note. Highs will be slightly lower than yesterday, but still hovering above norms. Then May 1st will start out with wide temperature differences. Mostly sunny skies will shine down on central parts of the country, but southern regions and the east coast could see 5 to 10 millimeters of rainfall. Then Gyeongsangdo and east of Jeollanam-do province will see passing rain during the day today. So grab a small umbrella in case of rain. Southern provinces will see a big jump in highs under cloudy skies. Daegu will see a high of 25 degrees Celsius, which is about 9 degrees higher than yesterday. Gwangju topping out at 22 degrees. Rain on Jeju could continue into tomorrow afternoon. Starting off hot and sunny on Children's Day weekend, that nationwide rain is in the forecast on Sunday afternoon, lingering into Monday with a drop in highs. So please plan accordingly for your long weekend. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나 둘 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, next sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's April 30th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Park Gun-woo.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Choi Ji-hee.
Good morning.
Happy Tuesday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Seoul City has raised its age gap for discounted climate cards from 34 to 39. This means those between the ages of 35 and 39 as well will be able to use the climate card at the discounted price for $41 a month for unlimited subway and bus rides. The city has been cutting around $5 for public transport users to alleviate relative costs and encourage more commuters to use these options. Since officials rolled out this policy, the number of young users doubled in the space of a month from 130,000 to 250,000 in late March. And the number of people with at least one extra job on the site has increased in Korea. That's according to figures released by Statistics Korea. Data showed that the number of people with multiple jobs in the first quarter of this year jumped by 22.4% compared to the same time last year. Those in their 60s made up the most of the proportion. Next in line were those in their 50s and 40s respectively, and the government attributed more delivery service options to have contributed to such trend. And last year, we saw temperatures in South Korea hit a record high. The average temperature was at 13.7 degrees Celsius year-long, which was the highest figure recorded since 1973. A total of 57.8 days from last year had the highest temperature recorded ever. And because of soaring temperatures, we've seen many weather-related abnormalities. For instance, flowers bloomed 2 weeks earlier than they would compared to 5 decades ago. We also saw 11% more forest fires last year compared to the average in the last 10 years. And the damage caused by last year's forest fires alone also amounted to 3 times the 10-year average. And I would like to ask our panelists in the studio whether they felt for themselves how hotter it was getting these days, and what are your thoughts on the accelerated climate change?
Well, accelerating climate change is definitely troubling, and especially because we can witness the effects firsthand. I mean, here in the country, we've seen scorching heat waves, and we've also seen devastating floods and also sporadic rains that used to be only seen in Southeast Asian countries, really. And this is clearly evident that we're seeing rapid transformation in our planet. And as someone who cherishes nature, it's very disheartening to see the ecosystem degrade and some species even vanish. Right. And it's not just about statistics because, like I said, we're witnessing the impact firsthand and around our communities and surroundings. So we're seeing drought-stricken farms, for example, and like I said, floods, and even little islands that are being swallowed by rising sea levels as well. So this may sound cliche, but I think we should really, not just for the sake of the planet, but for the sake of humanity, come together and urgently act, and also remember that we can make differences by acting differently in our daily lives as well.
And as you mentioned, it's no longer something that we're just seeing on the news. We're feeling it firsthand, meaning that whenever I go on a walk with my friends, I'm like, it's only March, but it's already so hot. It feels like summer. And South Korea used to have 4 distinct seasons, but now it feels like we only have summer and winter. And Konu, could you relate to that?
Yes, so climate change has been an ongoing issue for quite long, and I can especially feel it these days as the weather is getting hotter and hotter each year. And just look at me, I had to roll up my sleeves starting from, what is it, like late March, early April? It wasn't like this in the previous years. And when we think of the agricultural products that used to be cultivated in tropical regions, but now cultivated in Korea, and also for the fishery products as well. I can actually feel that the weather and climate is changing rapidly, so I think we need some actions.
Exactly. And always we cover on News Gen whenever we talk about climate change, we say that action is now needed. We can't delay this because we're seeing climate change accelerate by the minute we're speaking. And as you mentioned, Chi, it always starts off with little daily habits that we can fix on a daily basis, not ordering too much food in order to reduce food waste, using no longer plastics but reusables. For instance, bring a tumbler instead of using your plastic bottles. It's all those daily habits that count. Now we're going to switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day, and today we have my colleague Park Kon-woo joining us in the studio because of his recent coverage of Korea's booming dessert market. Now, Kon-woo, why don't you first start our main discussion off by telling us why you've decided to cover this topic in the first place?
Yes, of course. So first of all, I was wondering why is this Korean dessert market expanding? And as you can also see on the data on the screen, according to data released by South Korean card company KB Card, the sales recorded at dessert shops domestically have been constantly increasing compared to 2019, from 0.2% more in 2020 up to 61% more in 2023. Along with this official data, I've been noticing so many famous dessert franchises coming into Seoul recently, such as Tim Hortons, Basha Coffee, and many more. So I've also done this coverage to get an answer to the question, why Korea? And many people I spoke to said they would spend approximately $14 to $21 a day just on desserts, meaning people are spending more on desserts than they would do on their single meals. So as many people are spending so much on desserts, I could truly understand why they are never hesitating to wait those long lines to get their favorite treats. And despite the fact that those desserts are quite expensive.
And as a person with a sweet tooth, I welcome this booming trend where a lot of dessert companies and franchises from around the world are coming to Korea. But Chi, did you also realize firsthand that we are seeing a booming K-food trend, especially in regards to desserts?
Yes, definitely. So adding to Kon-woo's statement, it's also worth noting that the rapid growth of the dessert market here in the country is largely attributable to the unique characteristics of the MZ generation, because for this generation, food or dessert is not just food, but it's a form of new play. Now, they love to experience and share novel and aesthetically pleasing even desserts, and they share them on their social media to feel connected and also to feel trendy as well. And the competition to try out popular, unique desserts are very fierce that, like Kon-woo said, they have to sometimes queue up to try out these desserts. But the pleasure gained from trying out the uniqueness of these desserts are worth it because they are lining up in front of these popular stores.
And you mentioned a great point there. It's a play culture, and I contributed to that play culture yesterday, actually. I went to the place that we're seeing on the screen right now, and there's just 1,000 types of desserts there. That's an exaggeration, of course. There's just so many desserts there and many options. And the reason why I went was because on social media, you would see trending posts with hashtags saying they've tried this there, and I wanted to be a part of that culture. But apart from desserts, there seems to be so many other popular Korean dishes these days. I mean, food culture is always quickly evolving. So especially among our generation, which is the most popular K-food trend right now?
Well, in regards to dessert, with the rapidly expanding dessert market, like you said, we're seeing a lot of different options and varieties as well. So there are even all-you-can-eat dessert buffets, like the place you've been to yesterday, and pastries such as tarts, macarons, and dakwas, and even salt bread are they continue to be popular. But also traditional Korean desserts such as yakgwa and those with ingredients that used to be considered enjoyed only by seniors are gaining popularity among the younger generation as well, such as mugwort and black sesame as well. And also the release of singer-songwriter PB's 밤양갱, which refers to the sweet chestnut traditional Korean jelly, has also gained popularity because of the song as well. So this innovative approach of adding the modern tastes, such as, for example, modern flavors like hazelnut or milk tea, is really attracting the younger generation because because it's adding that contemporary flair to these desserts.
So there is a fusion between traditional tastes and contemporary tastes, as you mentioned. And I also think it's the mix of West and East as well. We are seeing Western palettes combined with our Korean traditional palettes as well. Now, Konu, would you like to add on, apart from desserts, what are some other popular foods?
Yeah, so other than desserts, I do want to mention tteokbokki, which is a Korean-style spicy rice cake. And these days, these stores that sell tteokbokki are coming up with different types of tteokbokkis, such as like the mara spicy taste, and then sauces like black bean sauce, creamy rosé sauce, and so on. I can do this all day. And also ingredients that go inside tteokbokki, like the Chinese glass-like noodles, are constantly popular due to its chewy and sticky taste, and that's why I love it so much. I actually want to go get some right after the show. And I think I won't be able to talk more about food trends without desserts. So adding on a bit more about some desserts that are trendy these days, I think yogurt ice cream is one of the most popular things among MZers these days in Korea. And also crookies, which is a croissant that has these chocolate chip cookies on top of it, which is so delicious. So that's one of the most trending desserts these days.
I can't stop but smile because I am such a big sweet tooth, and also I love all the food menus that you've mentioned, and I think they're really booming thanks to social media. I mean, I may have not heard about it, but when I get a post from my friend saying, hey, did you try this latest food dessert out? I'm like, I must try it. But then again, as you could see, we are seeing evolving food trends in Korea. Just on NewsGen alone, we've mentioned all the trending food last summer, winter, and now we're seeing desserts boom up. So we're going to be evaluating South Korea's food market. What are some distinctive traits in the trends that we've seen so far, starting with you, Chi-hee?
Right, so the Korean market has gained reputation for its agility and embracing new trends and its keen sensitivity, especially to food trends as well. Now, particularly in the digital age, we've mentioned social media a lot. With the advent of social media, accessibility as well as the openness to foreign desserts has become a lot more easier. And it's also demonstrating the market's adaptability and, like I said, openness. And market watchers also attribute the large expansion of the dessert market in the country to value-conscious consumption, especially amid the atrophy of the overall consumer spending.
All right, and based on your coverage, Konu, what would you think is affecting the South Korean food market?
Yeah, so I do want to mention some things, some factors. Especially, I do want to emphasize the impact of social media as well. Because these days, Koreans are so into these mukbang YouTube channels or short videos on Instagram, TikTok, and whatever platform it can be, that shows these new food items on those platforms so that people can get intrigued and so that they can subscribe those channels and those channels can gain more viewers as well. And one other trait I want to share is according to one marketing professor I interviewed. So let's first take a listen to what he said.
Due to high stress levels, people have a huge desire for desserts, and many of those have a wide but short trending term. Korean consumers are highly affected by others, so as soon as one item goes viral, it withers quickly afterward.
So as he just said, high stress levels among these MZers caused by, well, studies, their work, is leading them to actually find these new desserts. And one other thing was that the so-called ditto consumption trend, which is explained as you choose, I'll follow trend, is very prevalent among South Koreans. So this kind of peer influence actually has huge impact among Korean consumers.
And we are seeing rapid ditto trends thanks to social media. We see a picture and we're like, definitely, I'll try following that. And we asked our viewers if they could introduce any of their favorite desserts or any food dishes that are booming in popularity in their respective countries. So if you could take a look at the screen, you can find out what 3 of them had to share with us. Let's start with Bowie. Bowie said, there are many favorite desserts in Indonesia based on which province you're in. My favorites are kukar, palm sugar caramel fried cake, espyangjo, green dough covered banana served with ice and coconut rice pudding, and onde onde sesame covered mung bean cake. Now, Donji said, in the Philippines, we have halo halo. It's like a combination of patbingsu and kakigori. SJ said, there's so many desserts in my country, India. My favorite is gulab jamun. It comes with a sweet syrup. So as we can tell, I think all of our viewers are also on board with the sweet tooth trend in their respective countries. But to better find out what it's like in a specific part of the world, we're going to include a fellow millennial that has a lot to say on Korean dishes and their booming popularity. Stay tuned for our live interview. We're going to include Fernaz Piristay, a content creator and writer in Australia. She's also lived in Korea for 10 years, and Fernaz is also from Iran, so she'll be able to compare all these popular dishes, especially desserts from Iran, Korea, and Australia. So welcome, Fernaz.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
All right, welcome back. Now, we're talking about desserts today, and among many dishes that are booming in popularity, desserts are gaining much traction in South Korea, which is why I have to ask, what's the most popular dessert in Australia, where you're living at the moment, and in Iran?
So talking about Iran, of course, it's a very big country, and so different parts has so many different kinds of desserts, so it's really hard to pick just one. But if I want to mention only one dessert, shole zard, which is one of the most famous desserts in Iran. So shole in Persian is it means soft, and zard means yellow. So shole zard is a rice pudding made with rice, of course, sugar, cardamom, cinnamon, and saffron, which is a very Iranian ingredient. And I actually heard that recently it has become more popular in Korea, and they mix it with kimchi and soju, which is very interesting to me. I really want to try it. In case of Australia, of course, it's a multinational country, and so there are so many different kind of desserts from different countries here, from different nationalities. But if I want to mention one Australian dessert, I can mention pavlova. So pavlova is a meringue-based dessert, which is like it's like a circular cake with meringue outside and crisp and soft inside, which sometimes they decorate it with fruits, of course, and jam.
Mm-hmm. Now, Kono, would you like to ask the second question?
Yes. So, Fernaz, have you ever tried any, special Korean desserts or dishes? And if so, please share your experiences.
Well, living in Korea for 10 years, of course, I've tried so many different kinds of Korean desserts, which I love them and I miss them so much. But I can say that my most favorite Korean dessert is definitely bingsu. It's a little bit chilly here, so probably not good for this season, but I love bingsu, which of course it's like shaved ice, and on top of that there is syrup, and that was a culture shock for me first time when I saw bingsu with the red bean paste on top of that, because as most foreigners thought in the beginning, I heard they thought that it's a chocolate syrup or something like that. So definitely when I tried it first, I did not expect that taste, but I actually liked it. But more, I like the probably fusion version or like more modern version, which has fruits on the top. And I really, really like it. And I'm so happy that I could find a branch here which has Korean bingsu.
I see.
Well, other than bingsu, and earlier you mentioned this Iranian delicacy with kimchi and soju. Other than those, are there any ones that you want to try out in the future?
Well, in Korea, I've tried different desserts, as I mentioned, and I would love to try them again. Sometimes hot dog, was something that I really liked. It's a street food. It's of course a type of filled pancake filled with different kind of nuts, and I would love it when I walked in the streets like Xijang's traditional markets, and they would just give it out. And also in Chuseok, when they make songpyeon, I love their different kinds of shape and different kinds of colors. So I can't wait probably to go back and try those kind of desserts again.
I can tell that you're tilted towards more the traditional palate in Korea, where you like traditional rice cakes and even patbings, or red bean shaved ice. So it's really nice to hear that. And thank you so much, Farnaz. It was a pleasure talking to you today again.
Thank you so much for the chance. It was lovely to be in your show again.
All right. Now, based on our interview with Farnaz, you can tell that everyone has different palates, everyone has different preferences, which is why it's so hard to read into this rapidly changing food market trend in Korea. And Konwoo, as an econ correspondent, I think you might have your own insight as to whether seeing this rapidly changing food trend could have an impact or even a toll on us. Would you like to share your analysis?
Yes, of course. So just thinking from the consumer's perspective, and also based on the interviews that I've done with those consumers, they were actually welcoming these rapidly changing food and dessert trend because they could try all sorts of foods much quicker. But when we think of the opposite side, when we think of the business owner's perspective, especially when we think about the Chinese sugar-coated fruit snack Tauru case, compared to when hundreds of shops used to open last year, many of those stores are now closing due to the rapidly changing trend, leading people running those shops having a hard time. And there were similar cases in the past as well, such as the honeycomb ice cream and Taiwanese Castella. So personally, and also referring to an expert I interviewed, it'll be important for businesses to think of the longevity of their products in terms of popularity in order to keep their stores open for a longer period.
And I think that's really important because sustainability is the way to go. And keeping that in mind, what is the next food trend that you're looking forward to?
Well, I think in Korea, more exotic combinations will appear because the younger generation, like I said, they like unique experiences and they share this among each other. And so some foods or desserts that may not seem palatable, like odd combinations such as mugwort ice cream or even cilantro cake, etc., could be popular. And I think moving forward, we'll see more of these exotic combinations.
And in order to see those exotic combinations, I do hope that nowadays we are seeing K-food boom in popularity. But what I'm hoping to see is K-ingredients boom as well. Maybe, hopefully, local food products could be used, and then we can see it being imported to different parts of the world, and hopefully we'll see combinations not only just here in Korea but around the world so that K-desserts pave a new way. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Park Konwoo.
Always a pleasure.
And Choi Ji-hee.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's mine? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite